The Stranger, from 2050, Part 1. The man who appeared from nowhere. The storm arrived without warning. Dark clouds covered the sky above the small town of Ashwood, Oregon. Heavy rain pounded the empty streets, while thunder echoed across the mountains. Most people had already locked their doors and stayed inside. But that night, something impossible happened. At exactly 11:47 p.m., a bright flash of blue light suddenly appeared in the middle of an empty road near the edge of town. The light was so intense that it illuminated the entire street for a few seconds. Then it vanished, and when it was gone, a man was standing there, alone, confused, and completely soaked by the rain. The man looked around nervously. His clothes were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. A dark metallic jacket covered his body, and strange glowing lines ran across the fabric. His breathing was heavy. He looked terrified. In his hand was a small, damaged device that flickered with blue sparks. The screen was cracked. The man stared at it. No, this isn't right," he whispered. Then he looked at a nearby road sign. Ashwood, population 4,382. The man's eyes widened. It worked. Before he could say anything else, the device suddenly shut down. The glowing screen turned black. The man froze. For several seconds, he simply stood there in the rain. Then he started walking toward town. A few minutes later, inside a small gas station, an elderly cashier named Robert was preparing to close for the night. The storm had driven away the last customers. The store was empty. Suddenly the door opened. A cold gust of wind rushed inside. Robert looked up. The strange man stood in the doorway. His clothes were wet. His face was pale, and his eyes looked frightened. "Are you okay?" Robert asked. The man stepped forward. "What year is this?" he asked. Robert laughed. "What kind of question is that?" The stranger didn't smile. "What year is this?" Robert slowly frowned. 2026. The man's face turned white. For a moment, he seemed unable to breathe. Then he whispered something that Robert could barely hear. 24 years earlier than expected. Robert felt uneasy. "Who are you?" The stranger looked directly into his eyes. "My name is Ethan Walker." He paused. Then he said something that would change everything. "I came here from the year 2050. Silence filled the store. The sound of rain tapped against the windows. Robert stared at him, then laughed. "That's a good joke." But Ethan wasn't joking. Not at all. The next morning, news about the strange man spread through Ashwood. Most people thought he was crazy. Others believed he was simply trying to get attention. By afternoon, almost everyone in town had heard the story, and almost everyone was laughing about it. Except Ethan, because he knew something they didn't. Something terrible was about to happen. At exactly 5:15 p.m., Ethan walked into the town cafe. Several people immediately recognized him. "Hey!" One man laughed. "How's the future?" Everyone chuckled, but Ethan ignored them. Instead, he looked around the room, then pointed at a young woman sitting near the window. "Leave now." The woman frowned. "What?" "Leave the cafe immediately." The room became silent. "Why?" she asked. Ethan's voice grew serious. "Because in less than 10 minutes, a truck is going to crash through that window." People exchanged confused looks. Then laughter filled the room again. Nobody believed him. Nobody. But Ethan did, because he had already seen it happen. In another timeline, in another future. And this time, the countdown had already begun. To be continued. End of part 1. Next part, the impossible prediction.
And this time, the countdown had already begun. Ethan stood silently in the cafe. The woman near the window crossed her arms. "You expect me to believe that a truck is about to crash through this cafe?" Several people laughed. One man pulled out his phone and started recording. "This is going online," he joked. Ethan didn't react. His eyes remained fixed on the large clock hanging on the wall. 5:08 p.m. 7 minutes left. The woman shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere." Ethan took a deep breath. "You have a little brother named Noah." The smile disappeared from her face. "How do you know that?" Ethan continued. "He's 12 years old. Today he forgot his school bag on the bus." The room became silent. The woman's eyes widened. Nobody in the cafe knew that. Not even her closest friends. "Who are you?" she whispered. Ethan looked away. "Leave. Now." A nervous feeling spread through the room. Some people began exchanging worried looks. Others still believed it was a trick. The clock moved. 5:10 p.m. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Thunder shook the sky. A few customers quietly stood up and walked away from the window. The woman remained frozen. Her heart was beating faster. Something about Ethan felt different. He wasn't acting. He wasn't joking. He looked afraid. Very afraid. 5:12 p.m. 3 minutes left. Suddenly Ethan grabbed a chair and moved it away from the window. "What are you doing?" someone shouted. Ethan ignored them. His eyes never left the road outside. A truck was approaching in the distance. At first everything seemed normal. Then Ethan's face changed. "No," he whispered. The truck suddenly swerved. The driver lost control. People inside the cafe gasped. The vehicle skidded across the wet road, straight toward the building. "Get down!" Ethan screamed. Crash! The massive truck exploded through the front window. Glass flew everywhere. Tables flipped over. People screamed. The entire cafe shook violently. For a few terrifying seconds, chaos filled the room. Then silence. Slowly, people looked around. Everyone was alive. If they had remained sitting near the window, several of them would have been killed. The woman stared at the destroyed front wall. Her legs were shaking. Then she turned toward Ethan. The same question filled everyone's mind. How did he know? Outside, police sirens echoed through the rain. Within minutes, officers arrived and secured the scene. Witnesses all told the same story. A stranger had predicted the crash. To the exact minute, news spread through Ashwood faster than ever. By nightfall, everyone in town was talking about Ethan Walker, the man from the future. But while the town was trying to understand him, Ethan was staring at the dark sky. Because the truck crash wasn't the real problem. It was only the first sign. The first warning. The event he truly feared was still coming. And according to his memory, there were only 5 days left before it began. Far away, in a government surveillance center, a computer screen suddenly flashed red. A hidden system had detected an impossible anomaly. A name appeared on the monitor. Ethan Walker. For several seconds, nobody in the room spoke. Then a senior officer slowly stood up. His face turned pale. "That's impossible," he said. A younger agent looked confused. "Sir, what's wrong?" The officer stared at the screen, then spoke 4 chilling words. He wasn't supposed to arrive. The room fell silent, and somewhere in the darkness, someone else was already looking for Ethan. Someone who knew exactly where he came from. Someone who would do anything to stop him. To be continued. Someone who would do anything to stop him. The rain continued through the night. Inside a small motel on the edge of Ashwood, Ethan sat alone in a dark room. The broken device from the future rested on the table. For hours he had been trying to repair it, but nothing worked. The screen remained black. His only connection to the future was dead. Ethan closed his eyes. Memories flooded his mind. Burning cities, collapsed buildings, crowds running in panic, and a single date that haunted him every day. June 26, 2026. 5 days away, the day everything changed. Suddenly, knock, knock, knock. Someone was at the door. Ethan immediately stood up. His heart raced. Slowly, he opened the door. It was the young woman from the cafe. She looked nervous. I need answers, she said. Ethan hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. The woman entered. My name is Sarah, she said. I know. Sarah sighed. Of course you do. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sarah looked directly into Ethan's eyes. Tell me the truth. Ethan sat down. The truth is dangerous. I don't care. Ethan looked out the window. Then finally spoke. In my timeline, millions of people died. Sarah froze. What? The world you know is not supposed to exist anymore. The room suddenly felt colder. Sarah stared at him. You expect me to believe that? Ethan reached into his pocket. He removed a small metallic object. Unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, the object projected a blue hologram into the air. Sarah jumped back. What is that? Technology from 2050. The hologram displayed images, flying transport systems, massive futuristic cities, artificial intelligence networks, advanced medical centers. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. It looked real, too real to be fake. Then the images changed. The futuristic city disappeared. Darkness filled the projection. Buildings collapsed. Fire spread across entire regions. Emergency alerts flashed everywhere. People ran through ruined streets. Sarah covered her mouth. What happened? Ethan's voice became quiet. Nobody knows exactly. An attack? No. A war? No. Sarah frowned. Then what was it? Ethan looked terrified. Something arrived. Silence. Sarah stared at him. What do you mean something arrived? Before Ethan could answer, his device suddenly came to life. Blue sparks exploded from its surface. The screen flashed. For the first time since his arrival, it turned on. Ethan grabbed it. His hands trembled. A message appeared. Temporal breach detected. Trackers active. Location compromised. Ethan's face instantly turned pale. No. Sarah looked worried. What is it? Ethan stood up. They found me. At that exact moment, outside the motel, 3 black SUVs quietly stopped. Their headlights switched off. Several armed agents stepped out. One of them held a tablet. A blinking red dot marked Ethan's exact location. The team leader spoke into his radio. Target confirmed. Move in. Inside the room, Ethan looked toward the window. He saw dark figures approaching. And he knew one thing immediately. These were not ordinary government agents. These people knew about the future. And they had finally arrived. To be continued. And they had finally arrived. Ethan's eyes locked onto the figures outside. His face lost all color. They're here sooner than I expected. Sarah rushed to the window. The black SUVs were parked silently in the darkness. Men in tactical gear were surrounding the motel. One by one, slowly, carefully, like hunters closing in on their prey. Who are they? Sarah whispered. Ethan grabbed his damaged device. The people who were supposed to stay buried in the future. A loud voice suddenly echoed from outside. Ethan Walker. The motel room froze in silence. We know you're inside. Come out with your hands visible. Sarah looked terrified. What do we do? Ethan stared at the back door. We run. The front door exploded inward. Bang! Wood shattered across the room. Agents rushed inside, but Ethan and Sarah were already moving. They sprinted through the back exit into the storm. Rain slammed against their faces. Behind them came shouting. Target is moving. Go, go, go. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Ethan and Sarah ran across a muddy field behind the motel. Their feet slipped in the wet ground. The sound of pursuing agents grew closer. Then, a bright blue pulse flashed from Ethan's device. For a split second, strange symbols appeared on the screen. Coordinates. A location. A place hidden deep in the forests outside Ashwood. Ethan stopped. His eyes widened. No way. What? Sarah asked. The device just found something. What? Ethan looked shocked. A future cache. Sarah frowned. A what? In case a time traveler became stranded, emergency supplies were hidden in different locations. You mean? Ethan nodded. There's technology from 2050 hidden in these woods. The agents were getting closer. They could hear barking dogs now. Search teams. Drones. Lights. Every second mattered. Ethan grabbed Sarah's hand. We need to reach that location. They disappeared into the forest. Hours later, the storm finally began to weaken. Deep inside the woods, Ethan followed the coordinates. The screen guided them between ancient trees and rocky hills. Finally, they reached a clearing. Nothing was there, only dirt. Sarah looked around. Are you sure? Ethan checked the coordinates again. Then he knelt. His hands brushed away wet leaves. Suddenly, clink, metal. Ethan's breathing stopped. He dug faster. A few minutes later, a circular metallic hatch emerged from the ground. It looked decades ahead of modern technology. Sarah stepped back. Oh my God. Ethan pressed his palm against the surface. The hatch lit up. Blue light spread across it. A voice spoke. Identity confirmed. Ethan Walker. The hatch slowly opened. Cold air rushed upward. Below them was a hidden underground chamber, filled with futuristic equipment, weapons, computers, power cells, and dozens of sealed containers. Sarah could barely speak. This is real. Ethan climbed down, first, then froze. At the center of the room stood a large glass cylinder. Inside it was something impossible. A person, suspended in a blue liquid, sleeping, motionless. Sarah stared in horror. Who is that? Ethan slowly stepped closer. The chamber lights illuminated the face inside the cylinder. And the moment Ethan saw it, his entire body froze. Because the person inside wasn't a stranger. It wasn't someone from the future. It wasn't an enemy. It was Ethan himself. A second Ethan, sleeping inside the chamber, waiting for something, or someone, to wake him up. To be continued. Fire. Waiting for something, or someone, to wake him up. For several seconds, neither Ethan nor Sarah moved. The underground chamber was completely silent. Only the faint hum of futuristic machines echoed through the darkness. Sarah slowly stepped closer to the glass cylinder. Her hands were trembling. This can't be real. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off the face inside. It was him. The same eyes. The same scar near his eyebrow. The same face. The same person. Or so it seemed. Suddenly, the chamber lights flickered. A computer system came online. Blue screens illuminated the room. A synthetic voice echoed through the facility. Emergency protocol activated. Identity confirmed. Ethan Walker. Ethan turned toward the nearest monitor. Text began appearing across the screen. Welcome back, Project Cronus. Sarah frowned. Project Cronus. Ethan's heart stopped. He had heard that name before. In the future, a classified program, one that wasn't supposed to exist. The monitor displayed another message. Open file. Yes, no. Without hesitation, Ethan pressed yes. The screen flickered, then a recorded video appeared. A man in a lab coat stood before the camera. The date in the corner read, August 12, 2049. The scientist looked exhausted, terrified, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. If you're watching this, then the timeline has already collapsed. Sarah and Ethan exchanged nervous looks. The scientist continued. Project Cronus failed. Humanity failed. The screen briefly glitched. Then the scientist leaned closer. What you're about to learn must never fall into the wrong hands. He pressed a button. An image appeared behind him. A giant circular structure, floating above Earth, unlike anything ever built by humans. Sarah whispered, "What is that?" The scientist answered as if he had heard her. "We called it the Gate." Ethan's face darkened. He remembered the name. The Gate. The beginning of the end. The scientist continued. In 2048, scientists discovered an object hidden beyond the edge of our solar system. We believed it was alien. We were wrong. The video glitched again. Static filled the screen. Then the scientist returned, his voice shaking. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't a spacecraft. It was a doorway. Sarah felt chills run down her spine. The scientist swallowed hard, and when we opened it, the recording suddenly cut off. The screen went black. Silence. No one moved. Then another message appeared. Warning. Hostile forces approaching facility. Ethan immediately looked up. The facility sensors had activated. Red warning lights flashed across the underground bunker. Sarah's face turned pale. They found us. Ethan checked the security monitors. His stomach dropped. Dozens of armed agents were surrounding the area above. But they weren't alone. Something else was with them. Something moving between the trees. Fast. Too fast. The agents seemed unaware of it. One by one, their radio signals began disappearing. A scream echoed through a speaker. Then another, and another. The forest outside had become silent. Terrifyingly silent. Sarah looked at Ethan. What is happening? Ethan stared at the screen. His face filled with fear. Real fear. The kind Sarah had never seen before. Because he recognized the movement. He recognized the pattern. And if he was right, then the thing outside wasn't human. It was the first sign of the catastrophe that destroyed the future. And somehow, it had arrived 4 years earlier than it was supposed to. The motion detector suddenly flashed. A single signal appeared, directly above the bunker, standing right over them. Then the facility speakers came alive. A strange voice echoed through the underground chamber. Cold, distorted, impossible, and it spoke only 3 words. We found you. To be continued. Fire. We found you. The voice echoed through the underground chamber like it came from everywhere at once. Ethan stepped back instinctively. Sarah grabbed his arm. That voice, it's not human. The red alarms kept flashing. The entire facility was now on lockdown. Heavy metal doors began sealing off different sections of the bunker. Clang, clang, clang. One by one, Ethan looked at the control panel. We're trapped. Sarah's breathing became uneven. What do we do now? Ethan turned toward the sleeping version of himself in the glass cylinder. For a moment, he stayed silent. Then he said, "We wake him up." Sarah froze. "What? That's you?" Ethan nodded. "And he might be the only one who knows how to stop this." The system suddenly spoke again. "Warning. Containment breach imminent." Lights flickered violently. The temperature in the chamber dropped. Ice formed on the metal floor. Something outside was getting closer. Very close. A deep scratching sound came from the ceiling above. Screech. Sarah looked up in fear. "Ethan." The glass cylinder suddenly started powering down. Blue liquid inside began draining. Ethan rushed forward. "No. No. 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 Don't shut off now." The system responded instantly. Awakening sequence initiated. The sleeping Ethan inside the cylinder twitched. His fingers moved slightly. Then his eyes slowly opened. But something was wrong. His eyes were not normal. They were glowing faint blue. Sarah stepped back. "That's not you. That's not human." The cylinder fully opened. Steam rushed out. The second Ethan stepped out. Slowly. Calmly. Too calmly. He looked at the real Ethan standing in front of him. And smiled. A cold smile. "I was wondering when you'd arrive," he said. Ethan's face tightened. "What are you?" The second Ethan tilted his head. "I'm what you become, when you stop trying to save everyone." Silence. Sarah whispered. "What is he talking about?" The second Ethan took a step forward. "The timeline didn't break because of the gate. It broke because of you." Ethan shook his head. "No. That's impossible." The second Ethan's eyes darkened. "You tried to stop it. You failed. And now they are already here." Suddenly, the entire bunker shook violently. Boom! A section of the ceiling collapsed. Dust filled the room. Alarms screamed louder. From the smoke above, silhouettes began to appear. Not soldiers. Not agents. Something else. Their shapes were wrong. Too tall. Too thin. Moving without sound. Sarah backed away in horror. "What are those things?" The second Ethan looked at them. And for the first time, his smile disappeared. "We're out of time." The lights shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Then, multiple glowing eyes opened in the dark. And a voice whispered again. But this time, it came from inside Ethan's mind. "You opened the door. And now, we enter." To be continued. Fire. "You opened the door. And now, we enter." The whisper didn't come from outside. It came from inside their heads. Sarah collapsed to her knees, clutching her ears. "No. Get out of my mind." Ethan grabbed her. "Don't listen to it. Focus on me." The bunker was now almost completely dark. Only emergency red lights flickered weakly in the smoke. The glowing eyes in the shadows began to move closer. Slow, silent, unnatural. The second Ethan stood perfectly still, as if he already understood what they were. The real Ethan stepped forward. What are they? The second Ethan answered without looking at him. Not things, not creatures. Results. Sarah looked up, confused. Results of what? The second Ethan finally turned. Of opening the gate. A loud metallic scream echoed above them. Skrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr inside, more shapes dropped down into the chamber. But when they hit the ground, they didn't make a sound. Ethan backed away slowly. Why are they here now? The breach was supposed to happen in 2050. The second Ethan looked at him. And yet here they are. Because time is not stable anymore. Sarah shouted. Can someone explain what is actually happening? The second Ethan walked toward a control terminal. He pressed his palm on it. The system activated instantly. A holographic map appeared in the air. Earth. But broken, flickering, distorted timelines overlapping each other. He pointed at one section. This is Ashwood. Then another flicker appeared. 2049 timeline. Then another. 2050 collapse point. Ethan's eyes widened. Timeline collision. The second Ethan nodded. Exactly. Sarah whispered. So the future is leaking into now. A pause. Then, yes. Suddenly, the sleeping silence broke. The creatures moved at once. Fast. Too fast. One of them lunged towards Sarah. Ethan reacted instantly. He grabbed a metal pipe and struck it. Clang. The creature didn't fall. It only tilted its head. As if curious. Then it spoke. Not in words, but in memory. Sarah suddenly saw flashes in her mind. Cities burning. People disappearing. A sky opening like a wound. She screamed. Make it stop. Ethan pulled her away. But now more of them were surrounding them. The second Ethan watched calmly. Almost disappointed. You still don't understand, he said. Ethan yelled. Then explain it. The second Ethan turned slowly. You didn't come here to stop the gate. You came here because you already failed. Silence. Even the creatures stopped moving for a moment. Ethan froze. What are you saying? The second Ethan walked closer. His voice dropped. You are not the first Ethan Walker to try this. A heavy silence. Sarah looked between them. What does that mean? The second Ethan pointed at the sleeping pods lining the chamber walls. One after another, dozens of them, all empty, except faint signs, names, different versions, different attempts. Ethan's breathing slowed. No. The second Ethan finished. You are version 17, and every version before you made the same mistake. The bunker lights flickered violently again. The creatures outside the chamber walls began breaking through. The second Ethan looked directly at him. And every time, they opened the gate anyway. A massive explosion shook the facility. Boom. The wall behind them shattered. A wave of darkness poured inside. The creatures entered fully now. Sarah screamed. Ethan turned toward the exit tunnel. There has to be a way out. The second Ethan stopped him. There is. Ethan looked at him. But you won't like it. The creatures were only meters away now. The second Ethan pointed toward the central console. You reset the timeline, or you stay here, and become them. A beat of silence. Ethan looked at Sarah, then at the approaching shadows, then at himself, and for the first time, he understood. The real battle was never outside. It was the choice he was about to make. And the clock had already reached 0. To be continued, and the clock had already reached 0. For a moment, everything stopped. No sound, no movement. Even the creatures froze mid-step. Sarah looked around in confusion. What just happened? Ethan didn't answer, because he could feel it. The air itself had changed. Like reality had paused, and was holding its breath. The second Ethan walked slowly toward the central console. This is the point of collapse, he said quietly. Ethan followed him. Then fix it. The second Ethan laughed once. A cold, empty sound. You still think it can be fixed? He tapped the console. A new hologram appeared. It showed the Earth, but split into layers. Dozens of overlapping timelines, all collapsing into one single point. This is not a broken timeline, he said. This is a collapsing structure. Sarah whispered. So everything is ending. The second Ethan looked at her. Not ending. Converging. Suddenly, a deep vibration shook the entire facility. VMMMMMMMMM. The creatures outside began screaming. Not with voices, but with frequency. The bunker lights exploded one by one. Darkness spread again, but this time, something different happened. A door appeared in the air. Floating. Circular. The gate. Sarah stepped back. That's it. Ethan stared at it. It wasn't supposed to be open yet. The second Ethan turned. It wasn't. But you accelerated it. Ethan clenched his fists. Then tell me how to close it. The second Ethan walked toward the gate. For the first time, his voice softened. You don't close it. You survive it. Ethan shook his head. That's not an answer. The second Ethan stopped. He looked at him directly. It's the only one left. Suddenly, from inside the gate, a massive sound echoed. Like millions of whispers speaking at once. Sarah fell to her knees again. Make it stop. Ethan grabbed her. Stay with me. The creatures outside began dissolving into the walls. As if they were being pulled back into the gate. But not all of them. Some were coming forward, entering fully. The second Ethan spoke quickly now. There is a core inside the gate. If you reach it, you can reset the convergence point. Ethan nodded. Then I go. The second Ethan grabbed his arm. No. Ethan looked at him. The second Ethan's eyes darkened. You don't survive inside the gate alone. A pause. Then he said, you need both of us. Sarah looked up. Both of you. The second Ethan turned toward the real Ethan. For this to work, one of us has to stay behind. Silence hit the room harder than any explosion. Ethan understood immediately. No. The second Ethan smiled faintly. You already know the rules. Only one version can remain stable. The gate expanded slightly, like it was waiting, breathing, alive. Sarah stood up shakily. This is insane. The second Ethan stepped toward the gate. If we don't do this now, there won't be any version of Earth left to argue about. It. Ethan looked at Sarah, then at the collapsing bunker, then at the gate. His voice dropped. Tell me the truth. Which one of us is real? The second Ethan answered without hesitation. You both are. A pause. But only one gets to continue. The gate opened wider. A massive pull of energy began dragging everything toward it. Metal bent. Lights shattered. The floor cracked. Sarah screamed. Ethan grabbed her hand. The second Ethan stood at the edge of the gate. And for the first time, he looked peaceful. Remember this, he said. If you survive, don't open it again. Ethan stepped forward. Wait. But it was too late. The second Ethan pushed him into the gate, and everything turned white. To be continued. And everything turned white. No sound, no gravity, no time. Ethan felt like he was falling, but also standing still. His mind couldn't understand what was happening. Sarah's hand was gone. The second Ethan was gone. Even his own body felt distant. Then, a voice returned. Calm, soft, familiar. Ethan. He opened his eyes, but there was no ground. Only endless white space stretching in every direction. And in front of him, a single floating structure, a core, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Tum, tum, tum. Ethan stepped forward. Each step created ripples in the empty space. Where am I? He whispered. The voice answered again. You are inside the convergence field. Ethan turned. No one was there. Who are you? A pause. Then, I am what remains of your original timeline. Ethan froze. What? The voice continued. You were never sent here by accident. You were sent here as a correction attempt. The core pulsed faster. Tum, tum, tum. Images suddenly exploded around him. He saw Earth. Not destroyed, not future, but rewritten. Different versions of history flashing like broken film. The voice became stronger. You are not saving the world. You are selecting which world survives. Ethan backed away. That's impossible. The voice answered instantly. You already did it 16 times before. Ethan's breath stopped. 16. The images shifted. He saw himself. Different versions. Different decisions. Some choosing to destroy the gate. Some choosing to control it. Some choosing to escape. All ending the same way. Collapse. The voice spoke again. And now you are at the final iteration. The core began opening. Slowly. Like an eye waking up. Ethan felt his body being pulled toward it. He struggled. No. Stop. But the pull was stronger than anything he had ever felt. The voice softened. There is only one stable outcome left. Ethan shouted. What outcome? And then, silence. A single image formed in front of him. Sarah, alive, standing in Ashwood, but the sky behind her was different. Too quiet, too empty, as if something important had been erased. The voice said, if you choose this timeline, she survives, but you will never exist. Ethan froze. The pull increased. His body started dissolving into light. He looked at Sarah's image, then at the core, then whispered, there has to be another way. The voice replied, there isn't. The core fully opened. A massive wave of energy exploded outward. Ethan's memories began breaking apart, one by one, but in the last moment, he saw something else. A second option hidden behind the first image. A fractured timeline. Sarah standing. But so was he. Both alive, but the world, unstable. The voice warned immediately. That timeline collapses within 72 hours. Ethan's breathing became heavy. So I either disappear, or I doom everyone. A pause. Then, yes. Everything began collapsing. Faster. Reality folding inward. The final decision point arrived. Ethan closed his eyes, and for the first time, he stopped thinking like a survivor, and started thinking like the cause. He whispered, if I'm the reason this started, then I have to be the one who ends the cycle. He reached toward the fractured timeline. Not the safe one, not the perfect one, but the unstable one, the one that shouldn't exist. The core screamed, error, error, error. The white world shattered, and everything began collapsing again. But this time, Ethan didn't fall. He chose. To be continued. Fire. The core screamed, error, error, error. Reality didn't just break this time. It cracked like glass. And then, it collapsed. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. Cold air filled his lungs. Rain. Real rain. He was lying on wet ground. A forest. Night sky above him. No white void. No gate. No bunker. Just silence. He tried to move. His body was heavy, like he had survived something impossible, but lost parts of himself in the process. Sarah, he whispered. No answer. He slowly stood up. The forest looked normal. Too normal. But something was wrong. The stars in the sky didn't match. Constellations were slightly different, like reality had been rearranged. Ethan looked at his hands. They were shaking. Then, a sound behind him. Footsteps. He turned quickly. Sarah was standing there, alive, breathing, confused. Ethan. He froze. Relief hit him first, then fear, because something was missing. She didn't remember anything. Not the bunker, not the creatures, not the gate. Sarah stepped closer. Where are we? What happened? Ethan struggled to answer, because in his mind, fragments were still breaking. He remembered the choice. He remembered the core. He remembered choosing the unstable timeline. But everything after that was missing. Sarah looked around. This place feels strange. Ethan nodded slowly. It's not fully stable yet. A long silence. Then Sarah asked, did we survive something? Ethan hesitated. Yes. But not cleanly. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the sky. Not thunder. Something deeper, like the world itself adjusting. The ground shook slightly. Ethan looked up instantly. His face changed. No. Sarah panicked. What now? Ethan pointed at the horizon. A faint blue line was forming in the sky. Like a crack, but not in the sky. In reality itself. Sarah's voice trembled. What is that? Ethan whispered the truth. The convergence is still happening. Sarah stepped back. But you said we fixed it. Ethan shook his head. I didn't fix it. I changed it. The blue crack expanded slowly, like something trying to push through. Ethan's device, somehow still in his pocket, flickered once. A final message appeared. Stability, 3%. Sarah saw it too. Her eyes widened. 3%. Ethan clenched his fists. We didn't escape the system. We just delayed it. The sky crack widened again. A low whisper returned. Not from outside. From everywhere. You cannot rewrite what was already opened. Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm tightly. Tell me there's still a way. Ethan looked at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then finally, there is one, but you won't like it. The wind stopped completely. The forest went silent. Even the crack in the sky paused, as if listening. Sarah swallowed hard. What is it? Ethan looked at the unstable sky. Then back at her. If I go back, I can seal the gate before it fully opens. Sarah's voice shook. And you? Ethan didn't answer immediately, because he already knew. If he went back, this timeline would lose him completely. Forever. Sarah realized it. No. Ethan nodded slowly. This time, there is no version of me left to come back. The sky crack began widening again. Faster now. Reality was running out of time. Sarah shook her head. You can't just disappear. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. I already did, in every version that failed. A deep silence. Then he added softly, but maybe this is the one where it stops. The wind started again, stronger. The crack opened wider. The gate, somewhere beyond reality, was waking again. Ethan took a step forward, then stopped. He looked at Sarah one last time. Live this version carefully. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Ethan. He nodded, then whispered, don't open anything you don't understand. And then, he turned toward the crack in the sky, and stepped inside. The forest vanished, the world flickered, and everything began again. But somewhere, in the silence between timelines, a final echo remained. Maybe this time, it would end differently. The end. Fire.